In February 2016, drug dealer Niall Fitzgerald walked out of Portlaoise prison after serving 6 years behind bars. Inside, he'd shared a space with infamous gangster Brian Rattigan, acting as one of his trusted lieutenants. Fitzgerald was originally handed a 10-year sentence for a reckless and brazen act, pointing a loaded handgun at 3 Garda detectives during a high-speed chase. Investigators later linked that same weapon to a gun attack on the home of feud rival Freddie Thompson. But freedom brought no redemption. Within months, Fitzgerald had thrown himself back into the underworld, carving out his own patch of the drug trade, a move that quickly put him in the crosshairs of rival gangs. While meanwhile he was getting involved in a number of altercations, his reputation for violence only grew. In one brutal incident, he slashed a young man across the face during a street row. His ambition, however, was short-lived. Just 4 months later, a passerby stumbled upon his body on a desolate country lane, where South Dublin fades into rural quiet. Fitzgerald had been executed, shot 6 times in a ruthless, cold-blooded hit. Conor Dolan was no ordinary gangland folk. Articulate, self-assured, and intelligent, he carried himself with a confidence that suggested he believed he was destined for more than street-level crime. By his early 30s, Dolan, who had dropped out of school young, was deeply entrenched in violent organised crime. But behind the bravado, he was being played. His own crew set him up to do the unthinkable, murder his close friend and fellow gangster, Niall Ozzy Fitzgerald. After the hit, they refused to even pay him what he was promised. Worse still, Dolan sabotaged himself. Instead of keeping quiet, he paraded the blood money, boasting and flashing the cash he'd earned for executing a man he once called a friend. High on cocaine, he later confessed the details to his ex-girlfriend. A father of 2 daughters long accustomed to his absence, Conor Dolan built a double life as a career criminal across Europe, hiding in plain sight as a traveller and businessman. He spent years drifting between Belgium and Spain, even claiming to have leased a bar in Torrevieja, the same coastal town where gang boss John Gilligan once ran the infamous pub, the Judge's Chambers. In London, Dolan posed as a construction manager, and on LinkedIn he styled himself as a polished forex trader and entrepreneur. Behind the facade, however, his real empire was far darker. Dolan dealt in drugs and prostitution, trafficking huge shipments of cannabis and cocaine while exploiting young women for profit. His circle was made up of hardened gangland figures deeply entrenched in transnational smuggling networks. Dolan operated as a lookout, scouting ahead in rental cars while convoys moved tons of cannabis through Spain and Belgium. He travelled to Morocco, to the mountains where the crops were cultivated, tracing the supply chain from its source to the European streets where he made his fortune. Conor Dolan's ties to Ireland's criminal underworld run deep. Among his closest associates was the late Carl Breen, infamously dubbed the Champagne Killer, after stabbing his friend Martin McLaughlin to death during a New Year's Eve party at Dublin's Croke Park Hotel in 2006. Dolan himself was handed a 7-year prison sentence for drug dealing after walking straight into a Garda surveillance trap. The Athlone apartment he used as a base for mixing and packaging drugs had been under watch for some time. Arriving early one morning to check on the operation, Dolan unknowingly stepped into the net. Armed officers were lying in wait, and within minutes, he was under arrest. But drug trafficking was only one part of his criminal career. Dolan built a reputation as a violent robber, burglar, and thief, with a record of threatening and attacking victims, including a peace commissioner. Between 2008 and 2018, he amassed 32 criminal convictions, cementing his place as a hardened and relentless offender. Meanwhile, Niall Fitzgerald, a longtime friend of Conor Dolan, worked the doors as a bouncer but lived a double life as an enforcer for Brian Rattigan's gang in Dublin. His criminal ties drew him into conflict with Freddie Thompson, a convicted murderer now serving life. Thompson had been aligned with the Gavin gang, who 2 decades earlier were locked in the infamous Crumlin-Drimnagh feud against the Rattigans, a bloody war that left at least 16 people dead. Thompson later moved on to the Kinahan cartel, where he was convicted of the 2016 murder of Doherty Douglas, gunned down inside his Dublin city centre shop. That killing became part of the Hutch-Kinahan feud, one of the deadliest gang wars Ireland has ever seen. Amid this landscape of shifting loyalties and vendettas, Dolan positioned himself on the Kinahan side. But his loyalty counted for little. His own crew betrayed him, using him to kill his friend and fellow gangster Niall Ozzie Fitzgerald, then cheating him out of the payment he was promised. You see, not long after his release from prison, Fitzgerald became embroiled in a violent clash where he slashed a young man across the face. The incident escalated when associates of Graham the Wig Whelan and Freddie Thompson, both aligned with the Kinahan cartel, were pulled into the dispute. Fitzgerald responded with a chilling warning that he would kill him, one of several threats he had made against rival gangsters in the months before his death. He knew he was a marked man, aware that danger circled closer with every feud and every threat. But on the night of his murder, he believed he was safe in the company of Conor Dolan. When Dolan pulled up outside a Tala pub in his BMW 3 Series, Fitzgerald got in, never realizing he had just placed his trust in the man who would betray him. The hit was set in motion on the 4th of June 2016. At 3 p.m, Dolan collected a gun from a van at the Topaz petrol station in City West. Fitzgerald spent the day drinking in Madison's pub in Tala, unaware that his final hours had already been decided. Dolan remained in touch, offering him a lift home. That night, at 10:25 p.m, Dolan drove Fitzgerald out of the city in his distinctive purple BMW. The destination was Hills Lane, a desolate rural stretch outside Crooksland. Dolan intended to kill him there, but Gardaí intercepted the car in Tala, searching it at Fortune's Town Lane. They found nothing, the gun had been hidden elsewhere, and allowed the pair to continue. The stop was logged, but the murder plan remained intact. Surprisingly, while Fitzgerald had given the police a false name, Dolan gave his real name and address. An hour later, Dolan lured Fitzgerald to Hooks Lane, a remote laneway off the Tala Blessington Road. He convinced his friend there was cocaine stashed in the bushes. While Fitzgerald searched, Dolan retrieved the weapon from the boot and shot him in the back. Fitzgerald tried to flee, but Dolan kept firing, striking him 6 times. As he collapsed, Dolan stood over him and fired again. By the time the gun fell silent, Fitzgerald had sustained 9 wounds, 3 of which were exit wounds. Dolan left him to die on the roadside just after midnight on the 5th of June 2016. He returned at dawn, finding the body still where it had fallen, before driving back to Tala. At 8 a.m, a local out walking discovered the corpse and alerted Gardaí. Dolan was immediately in the frame for the killing, having been seen with his victim in the vehicle by Gardaí. The following day, Gardaí searched Dolan's apartment on the Navan Road. It was a sweltering June afternoon, yet he had a lit fire in the living room. Detectives quickly realized why. Inside, he was burning evidence, a yellow marigold glove and a dual SIM burner phone. Gardaí doused the flames and seized the remains, along with 28 other items, including phones and SIM packs. Dolan, waiting outside, was noted to have blood on his tracksuit bottoms and cuts to his hands. Questioned about his whereabouts on the day of the murder, he claimed he could not remember. Initially, Dolan was arrested only for withholding information. He was interviewed 12 times, each time denying involvement. Gardaí released him, but their investigation intensified. Cell site analysis soon tied him directly to the scene. Of all the phones detected near the murder location that night, only 2 stood out, one belonging to Dolan, the other to Fitzgerald. In addition, CCTV, automatic number plate recognition cameras, and mobile phones also showed the movements of Fitzgerald and Dolan in the minutes before the killing. Dolan's ex-partner, the mother of one of his children, would however ultimately provide damning evidence. When news of the killing broke, she suspected Fitzgerald was the victim. Days later, Dolan invited her over. High on cocaine, he laid out the details, how he had lured Fitzgerald up the laneway, how he had shot him as he searched the bushes, how he had fired more rounds into him as he lay dying. He admitted returning at sunrise to view the body. He also revealed his motive. The gang had promised him €20,000, but handed only over half. She recalled seeing Dolan with a new girlfriend soon afterwards, dressed in expensive clothes and flashing cash. The woman wore a Michael Kors watch he had bought her, further proof that he had profited from the murder, even if short-changed. In 2017, Dolan was rearrested when new intelligence came to light. This time he stayed silent. Released again, he fled Ireland, but the DPP later directed that he be charged with murder, and in May 2020, he was arrested in London under a European arrest warrant. He spent 14 months in Wandsworth prison before being extradited back to Dublin. Prison life held few fears for Dolan. Experienced and combative, he adapted quickly, even boasting of breaking another inmate's teeth in a row over food. He later posted a photo of his prison charge sheet on Instagram, flaunting his violence. While on remand in the Midlands prison, Dolan immersed himself in the case against him, poring over the book of evidence like a self-styled jailhouse lawyer. Convinced Gardaí had built their case on illegally obtained phone data, he believed the prosecution would collapse. His confidence grew after convicted murderer Graham Dwyer successfully challenged the use of mobile phone metadata at the European Court of Justice. So certain of acquittal, Dolan even risked notoriety. Using a smuggled phone, he gave a video interview to KRN-TV, an online channel run by a former UK inmate. Masked but still recognisable, he claimed Gardaí had no witnesses, no DNA, no fingerprints, just phone records he insisted were inadmissible. The stunt earned him disciplinary action inside prison, but also gave the public a rare glimpse into his arrogance and mindset. Despite his bravado, Dolan's hopes were shattered in July 2023. The evidence was enough. What stunned many was that he destroyed his own chances, not through lack of evidence, but through his own reckless pride. Conor Dolan never advanced his claim that the case against him should have been dismissed on the grounds of illegally obtained phone data. Instead, his first trial collapsed on a technicality after he successfully argued that the jury could have been prejudiced when prison officers approached and stood near him in court. A retrial was ordered with a new jury, but just 2 days into the proceedings, Dolan stunned everyone by abruptly changing his plea to guilty, admitting to the murder of Niall Fitzgerald. The sudden reversal left many questions unanswered. Gardaí believed he may have been instructed to accept responsibility in order to shield another organised crime group. Evidence in the case file hinted at activities involving other gangs, sensitive details that would have been exposed in open court had the trial continued. For Dolan, a life sentence was never part of the plan. Before his conviction, he had scoffed at the idea of walking away from organised crime and showed no sign of remorse for his actions. Yet the reality is unavoidable. He will not be eligible to step outside prison walls, even on temporary release, until he is at least 53 years old. The man who once thrived on quick cash, violence, and notoriety is now left to face the consequences of choices he always knew could end this way. In the end, his story underlines the stark truth of gangland life, the fleeting wealth, the inevitable betrayal, and the certainty that it rarely ends anywhere but a prison cell or a grave. That was it for today's video. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see our next videos.